If I told you that a single WhatsApp message could change the rhythm of your entire life, would you believe me? Didn't, not until it happened to me. I'm 55 years old, and for the last 2 months my heart's been beating like I'm a teenager again. But for someone I should have never even thought about that way. It started so innocently, so casually that even now, when I look back, I can't pinpoint the exact moment I crossed the line. Maybe it was when she said my plants looked beautiful, just like peace in a picture. Or maybe when I replied, not as beautiful as the one who noticed them. Didn't know that tiny spark would set fire to everything I thought I had under control. Her name's Ava, 37, my wife's maternal cousin's daughter. I know that sounds complicated already. She's family, technically, and yet she's not. We'd seen each other a handful of times at weddings or family gatherings, but we'd never really talked. I always remembered her as that cheerful, intelligent girl who had dreams in her eyes, the kind of brightness that made you wonder why life was so unfair to some people. She's still unmarried, still living alone in the city, busy with her career. And me? I'm just a man surviving a marriage that ran out of love years ago. My wife and I, we coexist. We don't talk much unless it's about bills or groceries. We sleep in the same house, but in different worlds. I used to pour my heart into gardening just to feel something alive around me. That day, I posted a short clip of my favorite ornamental plant. Just a random thing. Really, never knowing that a small, green leaf would lead to the most confusing chapter of my life. When Ava replied to my status, I smiled. It felt good. Someone noticed something I cared about. I thanked her. Then she replied again, saying, "You've got such a calming hobby. Feels peaceful just looking at it. I don't know why, but her words lingered." I replied, "You should visit sometime, see it in person." That's how it started. Just a few lines. Nothing wrong, right? But messages have a way of growing roots before you realize they've turned into vines wrapping around your mind. The next few days, we kept talking. Small things, harmless things. Work, family, weather. She told me how she felt pressured by her relatives to marry, how she was tired of people judging her for being single at 37. I told her how sometimes silence in my home felt louder than noise. It was strange, but we found comfort in our honesty. She made me laugh again, something I hadn't done in years. Her messages had warmth, humor, and this spark of life I thought I'd lost. Then one evening, she sent me a picture of her coffee mug with the caption, "Wish I had someone to share this with." I stared at that photo for a long time before replying, "Maybe you already do." I don't know what came over me. But from that moment, everything started changing. The chats became longer, the emojis softer, and the silences between messages heavier. Every ping from my phone made my heart skip. I started checking WhatsApp like a teenager in love. At 55, that felt ridiculous. But the truth? It made me feel alive again. She called me sweet, said I had a young heart. Sometimes she'd tease, sometimes she'd talk about how lonely nights felt endless. And I found myself replying in ways I shouldn't have. Words dipped in affection. Compliments that crossed the line between friendly and forbidden. One night she wrote, "You know, you don't look 55 at all. You've got this calm, graceful charm." I felt something twist inside me. I replied, "And you've got the kind of smile that could make anyone forget their age." She reacted with a heart emoji, then another, then a kiss. My heart was pounding. I told myself it was harmless, just texting. But deep down I knew I was lying. The guilt came slow, disguised as curiosity. Why did I care so much about her replies? Why did her laughter echo in my head even after I put the phone down? Why did I start waiting for her messages more than I looked forward to my wife's voice? I kept telling myself we were just friends. But friendship doesn't make your pulse race. Friendship doesn't make you dream about someone at night. One day, she didn't reply for hours. I remember pacing around my garden, feeling restless. When her message finally came, "Sorry, had a long day at work," I felt relief rush through me like air after drowning. That's when it hit me. I was addicted. Addicted to her attention, her words, her warmth. And she seemed to enjoy feeding it. But there was something else. In some of her replies, there was this unspoken invitation, a playfulness that kept me guessing. "You always say such sweet things, Uncle Noah. Makes me blush sometimes." She used to call me uncle jokingly, but then one day she stopped. Just started using my name. That one small change. It did something I can't explain. It erased boundaries that should have never been touched. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her. Her laughter, her messages, the way she said good night. It felt wrong, and yet it felt right in ways I couldn't deny. I sat in my dark living room holding my phone and whispered to myself, "What am I doing?" And the scariest part? I didn't want to stop. Days turned into weeks, and before I realized it, Ava had become a constant part of my routine. Morning coffee didn't taste right until she texted her usual, "Good morning, sleepy gardener." It was a playful nickname she gave me after I once told her I spend more time with my plants than people. It made her laugh. She said that's what made me different from men her age. I never thought a compliment could feel that intimate. But her words started echoing in my head long after the screen went dark. I began hiding my phone. From my wife. From myself, maybe. I told her I was busy with office work whenever she noticed me typing late at night. But the truth? I wasn't working. I was waiting. Waiting for that one ping that made everything else in my life fade away. Sometimes Ava would send voice notes. Her tone playful, her laughter unguarded. There was something about her voice that felt like warmth after a long winter. She'd talk about random things, her office gossip, a movie she watched, how her mom kept nagging her to get married. I'd listen over and over, smiling like a fool. Then one night she asked something that caught me off guard. "Noah, are you happy?" I froze for a second. No one had asked me that in years. Not my wife, not my friends. Maybe because deep down everyone already knew the answer. I typed, "Not really, but I manage," she replied after a few seconds. "That's sad. You deserve more than just managing." That line hit me harder than I expected. Maybe because I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen, to be understood without explaining. Our conversations started shifting after that night. Less small talk, more confessions. She told me about her heartbreaks, her loneliness, her fear of never finding the right person. I told her about my marriage, how it had turned into a quiet arrangement held together by routine, not love. She listened. She really listened. And in her words, I found something dangerously addictive. Empathy wrapped in affection. But soon, empathy turned into electricity. Her messages started getting bolder, subtle but suggestive. "You know, if I had a man like you, I'd never let him feel lonely." Or, "Sometimes I wonder how it would feel to talk to you in person instead of through this screen." I didn't know how to respond. Every time I tried to steer the conversation away, she'd pull it back, gently, playfully, like testing how far she could go before I'd stop her. But I didn't stop her. I told myself it was harmless, that she was just teasing. But a part of me didn't want her to stop. One evening, as I was watering my plants, she sent me a photo. Not inappropriate. Just her, sitting on her balcony, hair loose, sunlight falling across her face. She looked, peaceful. I stared at that picture for a long time before replying. "You look beautiful," she replied almost instantly. "You shouldn't say things like that." Makes me blush. Then a heart emoji. That night, I dreamt of her. Not vividly, not physically. Just her smile, her voice, her laughter echoing in my head. When I woke up, I felt both alive and guilty. I told myself I should stop, that this was going too far. But the more I tried to distance myself, the closer she seemed to pull me. A few days later, she didn't text all day. Not even a good morning. By evening, I felt restless, anxious, scrolling through our old chats, wondering if I'd said something wrong. Finally, around midnight, a message appeared. "Sorry, wasn't feeling well today. Just needed some quiet," I replied instantly. "Are you okay?" She said, "Just tired. Sometimes it's hard being strong all the time." Something in me snapped. I wrote, "You don't have to be strong with me." There was a pause. Then she sent another voice note, her voice low, almost trembling. "You always say the right things, Noah. I wish I'd met you earlier in life," those words. They were soft, dangerous. I replayed them again and again, every time feeling something inside me shift a little more. That night, as I sat in the dark, I realized I was no longer just chatting. I was emotionally entangled. And it wasn't just lust. It was loneliness meeting loneliness. Guilt meeting desire, and hope hiding behind emojis. The next morning, I woke up to a message that made my heart stop. I dreamt about you last night. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to ask what she dreamt. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted both before I could decide. She sent another line. You were smiling. Like you do when you talk about your garden. That simple line made me smile and fear myself at the same time. Because now it wasn't just text anymore. It was emotions. Memories and dreams intertwining between two people who should have known better. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything began to spiral. Because once you cross a line, even unintentionally, there's no way to go back and pretend it never existed. And deep down, I knew. The line between connection and confusion was already gone. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope between two lives. On one side was the dull, predictable world I'd lived in for years. The quiet dinners, the lifeless conversations, the polite nods with my wife. On the other was Ava, vibrant, unpredictable, intoxicating. Every message from her felt like a stolen breath of air in a suffocating room. But the more we talked, the harder it became to hide the chaos brewing inside me. One afternoon, as I was sitting in the living room pretending to read the newspaper, my wife walked in and said, "You've been smiling at your phone a lot lately. Who's making you so happy?" Her tone was casual, but her eyes searched mine. My throat went dry. "Just a friend," I said, forcing a laugh. "From the gardening club." She nodded but didn't seem convinced. She just said, "It's nice to see you smile again," and walked away. That line, "It's nice to see you smile again," it broke something in me. Because the smile she saw wasn't for her. It wasn't for our life. It was for someone else entirely. That night I texted Ava, "We should talk less. People are starting to notice." She replied instantly, "Are you worried about your wife?" I didn't respond for a few minutes. Then I typed, "I just don't want to hurt anyone." She sent back a message that sat heavy on the screen. "Sometimes the heart wants what the world says it shouldn't." I stared at that sentence for a long time. It sounded poetic, dangerous, and true, because deep down, I was already too far gone to pretend it was just casual. We started texting more privately, deleting messages, using disappearing photos. It felt thrilling, like we were keeping the universe's biggest secret. But every thrill carried a weight, the quiet guilt that followed every smile. Sometimes late at night, I'd catch myself typing her name into the search bar just to see her picture. I'd look at it and whisper, "What are we doing?" And then, as if the universe heard me, something unexpected happened. Ava stopped replying as quickly. Her tone changed, colder, shorter. At first I thought she was busy, but then one evening I saw her online for hours. And no message came through. I waited and waited. My chest felt tight. I wanted to message her, but something stopped me. Pride, maybe. Or fear. Finally, the next morning she texted, "Sorry, I've been distant, just thinking about things." I asked, "About us?" She replied after a long pause, "About everything. I don't know where this is going, Noah. I feel close to you, but I also feel guilty." That word, guilty, hit like a slap. Because it was mine too. I typed, "You're not alone." "I feel it too," she said. "Then maybe we should stop before someone gets hurt." My heart sank. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her she meant more to me than she realized. But how could I? How do you confess that your heart found warmth in the wrong place? Instead, I just sent, "If that's what you want." She replied, "I don't know what I want." For the next few days, our chat slowed. The silence between us grew louder than any words we'd ever exchanged. I kept checking her last scene, reading our old conversations, replaying her voice notes. My garden, once my escape, now felt empty. One evening, as I sat on the porch, my phone buzzed. It was her. "Do you miss me?" I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I typed, "Every second." Then she sent another message. "Then why did you stop talking like before?" I smiled sadly. "Because I thought you wanted distance." Her reply came fast. "I did, but distance isn't helping." And just like that, we were back where we started, trapped in the same loop of wanting and denying, drawn and torn, both of us pretending we had control. But something had changed. The innocence was gone. Now there was awareness of the danger, the consequences, the thin ice beneath our feet. One night she said something that made me go cold. What if someone found out about us? I froze. The thought had always lurked at the edge of my mind, but hearing her say it out loud made it real. I replied, "They won't, we're careful." She sent back a sad emoji. Secrets don't stay secrets forever, Noah. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my wife's face, my family's faces, and hers. I kept asking myself, was this connection worth the chaos it could unleash? The next morning, I decided to step back. For good. I didn't message her all day. Not the next either. I muted her chat, buried myself in work, tried to convince myself that silence was strength. But the heart doesn't obey logic. It craves what hurts it most. 3 days later, she sent me a message that shattered my resolve. "I dreamt of your garden again." It felt like home. Home, that word. It felt like both a blessing and a curse, and I realized then I wasn't running from her anymore. I was running from myself. I tried to convince myself that I was strong enough to stop, that all I needed was distance. A few days, maybe weeks, and I'd forget the warmth of her messages, the way her name lit up my phone. But it doesn't work like that. You can't just delete someone from your mind when they've already taken root in your heart. A week passed. I didn't text her, and she didn't text me. Silence filled every corner of my day, heavier than words, sharper than guilt. My wife noticed. She asked, "You've been quiet lately. Is everything okay?" I nodded, lying as easily as breathing. Just tired from work, but the truth was I wasn't tired. I was hollow. Then one evening while scrolling through WhatsApp, I saw it. Ava's new status. A photo of my favorite plant, my plant. The one I'd posted months ago when it all began. Her caption said, "Funny how something simple can remind you of someone you shouldn't think about." My heart dropped. Was that meant for me? It had to be. Who else could it be for? Before I could stop myself, I messaged her. "I saw your status." A minute later, her reply came. "I knew you would." I typed, "You're thinking about me, aren't you?" Her answer was immediate. "Every day. Even when I don't want to." That was it. The wall I'd built crumbled in an instant. We talked for hours that night. Not about the weather, not about family, but about us. How we felt. How wrong it was. How right it felt anyway. At one point she wrote, "Do you ever wonder why we met again after all these years?" I said, "Maybe life wanted to remind us we're still capable of feeling." She replied, "But feelings don't always mean we're meant to act on them." That line lingered. Hauntingly true, and yet every time she said we shouldn't. Her words felt like an invitation instead of a warning. We started calling again. Her voice filled my nights, replacing the silence that used to choke me. She'd talk about her dreams, moving to another city, starting fresh, and then suddenly she'd laugh and say, "Maybe I just want to escape my thoughts." Sometimes she'd fall quiet and whisper, "You make me feel safe." Those 4 words were my undoing. Because I'd been everything in life, a husband, a provider, a man of duty, but never someone's safe place. One Sunday morning, my wife asked if I wanted to join her for breakfast. She sounded hopeful, almost nervous. I said, "Maybe later." Without looking up from my phone, Ava had just messaged, "Thinking about our conversation last night." It felt special. I smiled at my screen while my wife quietly set the table alone. That moment burned itself into my memory, a picture of guilt I can't erase. The more I tried to balance both worlds, the more they began to blur. I'd hear my wife calling me from the other room, but I'd be lost in Ava's laughter echoing through my earbuds. Every ping from WhatsApp felt like a pulse, reminding me I was living 2 lives that could never coexist. Then came the day that changed everything. It was late afternoon. I was sitting in the garden when I saw her message. "I need to tell you something, but promise you won't be upset." My chest tightened. "What is it?" She replied, "Someone saw our messages. My cousin borrowed my phone yesterday." I froze. My fingers went cold as I typed, "Did they read them?" "I don't know. Maybe just a few." She asked who Noah was. My heart started racing. Images of whispers spreading through the family flashed in my head. If word got out, if my wife found out, everything would collapse. I wrote, "Ava, you need to be careful." "Delete everything now," she said she would. Then added softly, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to go so far. I stared at those words for a long time. They were the truth neither of us wanted to face. Because deep down, I knew she wasn't the only one at fault. I had crossed lines willingly. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded like the echo of my secret. I kept replaying every conversation, every emoji, every word I'd typed that shouldn't have been typed. Then, at 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It was Ava. I deleted everything. But I can't delete how I feel. I wanted to tell her that I felt the same. But instead I wrote, "Maybe this is where we stop before it destroys us." Her typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then came back. Finally she sent, "Maybe, but I'll miss you." I didn't reply. I couldn't, because for the first time, the silence between us didn't just feel empty, it felt final. The next morning, I deleted our chat, and as the screen went blank, a part of me went blank with it. For days after that, I kept expecting her message to appear again. It never did, until one evening a single line appeared on my screen. "Can I see your garden one last time?" I read her message again and again. "Can I see your garden one last time?" It was simple, almost innocent, yet it felt like a door being cracked open to everything we'd been trying to close. I should have ignored it. I should have told her no. But instead I typed, "Tomorrow evening, round 6, when it's quiet." And I hated how fast I pressed send. The next day felt endless. Every tick of the clock echoed like a countdown to something I wasn't ready for. My hands shook when I trimmed the plants that morning. I told myself I was preparing the garden, but really I was trying to calm my nerves. The air smelled of wet soil and guilt. When the doorbell finally rang, the world seemed to stop. I walked toward it slowly, feeling every beat of my heart. And there she was, Ava, standing at the gate in a pale blue dress, her hair loose, eyes uncertain. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She smiled faintly. "So this is your little paradise?" I nodded. "Yeah, the only place that still listens." She walked in, touching a leaf here, a flower there, like she was afraid everything might shatter if she moved too fast. The evening light caught her face, and I saw something there I hadn't seen before. Not playfulness, not flirtation, but sadness. "I shouldn't have come," she whispered. "Then why did you?" I asked. "Because goodbyes over text feel too easy." Her words hung in the air like mist. I wanted to tell her I understood, that I didn't blame her, that I was just as weak. But all I could do was stand there, staring at the life I'd built and the one I'd nearly destroyed. We sat on the old bench by the fence, the same place where I used to drink my evening tea alone. Now it felt heavy with every unsent message, every late-night confession. She looked at me and said softly, "You know this can't go on, right?" I nodded. "I know. But why does it still hurt?" I smiled sadly. "Because it was real, even if it was wrong." She blinked fast, like holding back tears. "You were my escape, Noah. I didn't mean to fall into this. And you were mine," I admitted. "But escapes have a price." We sat in silence as the sun sank behind the wall, painting everything gold. For a brief second, it looked like the world was forgiving us. Then the light dimmed, and all that was left was the truth. "I'm getting a transfer," she said finally. "New city. New start." I felt something inside me tighten. Relief, sadness, fear. I couldn't tell which was stronger. "That's good," I said, my voice barely steady. "You deserve peace." She looked at me, her eyes shining in the fading light. "And you? What do you deserve?" I swallowed hard. "Maybe just forgiveness." A small smile touched her lips, and she reached out, not to hold my hand, but to brush a fallen petal off my sleeve. "You'll find it someday." Then she stood, hesitated for a heartbeat, and walked toward the gate. I wanted to call her name, to stop her, to say one more thing that might make it easier. But sometimes silence is the only honest goodbye. When the gate clicked shut behind her, the garden felt different, quieter, heavier. The same plants, the same colors, but the air had changed. I sat there until the stars came out, realizing I'd been chasing warmth in someone else's shadow. That night, I didn't open WhatsApp. I didn't scroll through old messages or replay her voice. I just sat with myself, the man I'd become and the one I'd almost turned into. In the stillness, I finally understood something. Loneliness isn't cured by finding someone new to fill the void. It's healed by learning to live with the emptiness until it teaches you something. And maybe that's what she gave me. Not love, not redemption, but the painful gift of awareness. The days after Ava left felt strange, almost unreal. I went through my routine mechanically, watering the plants, checking the mail, eating dinner alone. But every step carried a weight I hadn't felt in years. The garden, which had once been my sanctuary, now seemed like a witness to everything that had happened. Every unsent message, every whispered thought. I tried talking to my wife more, filling silence with polite conversation, but I realized how far removed I'd become from her. Not because I didn't care, but because I had been seeking warmth where it shouldn't have existed. She noticed, of course. She always notices. One evening she said softly, "You seem different these days. I don't know if it's good or bad." I just nodded, not knowing how to explain that I had been both wrong and alive in a way I couldn't articulate. I didn't go back to texting Ava, not for weeks. Not because I didn't want to. Every fiber of me screamed to check my phone, to see if she missed me, if she thought of me. But because I had finally understood the fragility of boundaries. The fragility of trust. We had played with fire, and while we hadn't burned anyone physically, our hearts had been singed. I spent those weeks reflecting. I realized I had been searching for validation in the wrong places, chasing attention that gave me temporary relief, but no lasting peace. Ava had been a mirror, reflecting parts of me I had buried. Loneliness, desire, the need to be seen, to be understood. And I had fallen in love with the reflection, not reality. Then one evening, I decided to walk the garden alone. The sun was low, casting golden shadows across the leaves. I saw the places where we had sat, where she had smiled, and for a moment the pain of loss and the clarity of truth collided. I whispered to myself, "This ends here." Not because it's easy, but because it's right. It wasn't easy. I found myself replaying our last conversation, the way she had reached for the fallen petal, the way her eyes held both guilt and affection. But even that memory, as bittersweet as it was, became a lesson. Life doesn't give warnings in neat packages. Sometimes it tests your judgment, your restraint, your integrity, and sometimes it gives you someone extraordinary only to show you who you are and who you need to become. I started reconnecting with the people and things I had neglected. My wife, my friends, even myself. I didn't force it. I allowed the silence to teach me, the garden to remind me that growth takes time, patience, and care. And slowly I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not excitement, not infatuation, but steady, quiet peace. I never saw Ava again. Not in person, not in messages, but I didn't resent her. She had been a lesson wrapped in human warmth, and sometimes the most valuable connections are the ones that don't last forever. They are the ones that awaken something in you, only to leave you stronger, wiser, more aware of your heart and its limits. I learned that life isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about confronting them, understanding their impact, and carrying their lessons forward. Loneliness isn't a void to fill recklessly. It's a teacher. And sometimes love isn't about possession or fulfillment. It's about recognition and restraint. So here I am, tending my plants, watching leaves unfurl, listening to the wind in the trees, and realizing that the most difficult love is often the one that teaches you the most about yourself. And in the quiet of my garden, I found a kind of redemption that no message, no fleeting warmth could ever give. Weeks turned into months. The garden flourished in a way that mirrored my own slow healing. Every new leaf, every bloom felt like a quiet reminder that life continues, that growth persists even after storms. I learned to sit with my thoughts instead of running from them. To feel loneliness without filling it recklessly, I never contacted Ava again. Not because I didn't want to, but because I had finally understood the cost of crossing boundaries, the fragility of trust, and the weight of secrets. Sometimes longing is not weakness, it's awareness. And sometimes the right thing is the hardest thing to do. I still remember her words, the voice notes, the laughter. They didn't haunt me. They taught me that even a connection that shouldn't have existed can show you who you really are, what you've lost, and what you can still protect. I began to invest in my marriage in small ways. I started conversations with my wife, not about superficial things, but real ones. About silence, about our routines, about how we had grown apart. She didn't understand the full story. She didn't need to. But slowly we rebuilt a bridge over the quiet that had been growing between us for decades. And the garden? It became more than just plants. It became a sanctuary of lessons. Each bloom reminded me of patience, each weed of mistakes, and each pruning of reflection. I realized that love, whether familial, romantic, or platonic, carries responsibility. And the most important kind of love is the one you give to yourself, grounded in respect and integrity. I'm not proud of everything I felt or did. The attraction, the excitement, the secret messages, they all existed. But I am proud of what I chose to do afterward, to step back, to reflect, to preserve what truly matters in life. Sometimes I still imagine what would have happened if I hadn't stopped. The what-ifs linger like shadows at the edge of memory, but I also know that living through them, learning from them, is what gave me a second chance at honesty, with Ava, with my wife, and most importantly, with myself. So, if you ever find yourself caught between temptation and conscience, between longing and loyalty, remember this. It's never the desire itself that defines you, but how you choose to act on it. And sometimes the hardest choice, the one that feels like losing, is actually the one that saves you. I've shared my story, my secret, my confession. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, faced with a connection that made your heart race but threatened everything you held dear, what would you do? Would you follow the pull of desire or the quiet strength of restraint?